There's a very big conversation as to the reform of the multilateral financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, and all those. It's unfortunate that we have the short end of the stick. You know, our voice is very limited. Just imagine that you go into a situation like the special drawing rights. You know, countries that did not need the money got the money. Countries that needed the money the most never got anything. Just imagine that. You know, and it was supposed to be okay. How is it supposed to be okay? But because the discussion and the decision-making mechanism is such that we have no say. You know, that is one. The other thing that we must also be very clear about is that as so long as we don't build African multilateral financial institutions, we will continue to suffer these consequences. You know, today, and I have seen recommendations that came from the president of Ghana, which I'm very sympathetic to. We must begin to think about the Africa Development Bank and how we capitalize it, how we support it, Afri-Exim Bank, how we support it, Trade and Development Bank, how we support it, Africa Finance Corporation, how we support it. And we have already identified as AU, and I think there was a resolution to that effect in the last summit, the effectiveness of the Africa Union speaks to what Oman Musa was saying. There is a huge conversation globally on many issues that affect us. And yet, we are not in the discussion. We have not organized ourselves to be in the conversation. We are not leveraging on our numbers and our weight, you know, to influence the conversation. There's a big conversation about the reform of the UN in terms of the UN Security Council. I know we have made the African position clear, but not so many of us speak with conviction. You know, we say it as a by the way, you know, you read it in passing. And you know, people can see, do these people know what they want? You know, or they're just there. And if others think we don't know what we want, that is why this thing, procrastination, will continue. We must be clear on what we want. And that conversation, we must drive it. Because, why do we have to drive it? We must drive it because we are the people who are disadvantaged. That the whole conversation of the UN Security Council, 70% of it is about us. And it's about us when it is others discussing about us in our absence. You know, so we really have a solid case to make for us to drive that conversation. But we need an effective Africa Union to drive it. The second item is the issue of the African Court of Justice. There is absolutely no reason why we cannot roll into place the African Court of Justice. It will help us resolve many issues. Some of the issues that are stuck between the structures of the organization, of even our own organization. These are structures, these are challenges that can be resolved if we had an arbiter, if we had somebody, you know, if there is a disagreement between this organization and that agency within the AU, and somebody can help them interpret the statute that this is where you stop, this is where you start, this is not your role. Even the challenge we are having with all these decisions, you know, what decision is what. These are some of the things that can be interpreted. the court can interpret if we had a functional court. And I don't think we should procrastinate. We have the resolution 2719 of the UN, which is fine, but it would not be prudent for us to wholly rely on that. We need to be better prepared ourselves. And nothing stops us from being better prepared. Raising $1 billion from 54 countries should not be, a very tall order. It is not. We just have to be realistic to ourselves. It is said, if you think you are poor, then you are poor. We just have to be realistic and not to demean ourselves to levels that even undermines our own esteem as a people. So that's number one. And then with that, we can now agree on all the other, how to refine the architecture, the early warning issues, how much we build into diplomacy, the standby force, and all the other pieces that then support that whole architecture around peace and security in our continent. We still expect others to do, and that is why we are not doing what we must do. And I think the sooner, we have a peace and security architecture that places responsibility first with us and everybody else being secondary, the sooner we can be able to take charge of the situation. We must be alive to the fact that slowly we will have to do what we always expected others to do. I think we are getting to that point where the rest of the world are much more bothered about what's happening in their neighborhoods than what is happening in Africa. And depending on the UN system to solve some of our issues may not be tenable for longer. And the sooner we realize that, the better then we reform our peace and security architecture so that it speaks to the urgency of the issues that affect us. And I want to thank the panel of the wise for their recommendation, and I hope the recommendation is not just about increasing the fund to $1 billion. It is about the agility of using that fund so that it is not a fund that then becomes a monument, so to speak. It must be a fund that becomes available. And there must be, I hope in the recommendations, and I will take time to read through it, there must be a way of making those resources available and a way of replenishing those resources when they are used. And I think there is no, complicated mechanism. It has to just be simple, practical, and sustainable. So that is the reality of where we are.